Tonight on CFTK-TV News, we just learned the new name for the new Terrace Hospital. Taylor Bachrach had an important question to ask while in Parliament, and an investigation has opened looking into the recent BC election.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cal Maslin, and here's what's making the news in the Northwest and beyond for today. Once former U.S. President Donald Trump has officially secured his political comeback and returned to the White House for another term after winning a highly polarizing U.S. election. British Columbia's Premier David Eby has since offered Trump congratulations on his election win, saying that the province is a close neighbor that shares priorities with the United States. Eby next said in a post on social media that the American population have given Trump a critically important job. He also expressed that he is looking forward to working collaboratively with the U.S. president-elect. Eby last stated that several British Columbians have family relationships and businesses on both sides of the border. We have just been made aware that the new Terrace Hospital will be gifted a Tsimshian name. As was announced earlier today, it will be called the Quincy Regional Hospital under the Tsimshian name. Quincy is the Somali-X name for the Skeeter River. Northern Health also looks to recognize the contributions that Dr. Stanley Mills and others made to the region, and that Mills' name will be recognized in the facility with a history wall and will also have the ambulatory care unit named after him. Northern Health concluded that the new name is to recognize the territory that the hospital was built in and the region that it hopes to serve. In a different recent statement, it was revealed that the community of Thornhill is set to be the first benefactor of the latest grant being given out by the BC provincial government. The grant in question is said to be a total of $11.89 million, and while it is being given to the Kitimat-Stikine Regional District to ultimately decide what to do with it, $903,599 of those funds is being committed to Thornhill so they can build a well so that the community's water supply is secure. It's also been estimated that over just a span of 5 years or so, just a bit under $2.38 million of the grant can be spent yearly in order to best help out the various communities throughout the regional district of Kitimat-Stikine in a variety of different ways. MP Taylor Bachrach rose in Parliament to question the health minister on why occupational therapists don't qualify for the loans forgiveness program. Here's CFTK's Jaylene Matthews with the story.
MP Taylor Bachrach says it's an oversight that certain critical healthcare positions don't qualify for loans forgiveness in rural areas like Northwest BC.
Mr. Speaker, I recently met with a healthcare worker in Terrace whose job as a psychiatric occupational therapist is critical in addressing the toxic drug and mental health crises in our communities. She's the only graduate from her class that's working in a northern rural community. But here's the thing. This government's student loan forgiveness program excludes occupational therapists. This is clearly an oversight, and my question for the government is a very simple one. Will it correct its error and ensure that people like this person in Terrace, BC, get the loan forgiveness that they so deserve?
The Minister of Health didn't negate MP Bachrach's claims, but made no commitments.
And I was with a member in Terrace, and he's absolutely right. There are very significant challenges in rural and remote communities. I absolutely am looking forward to talking to him on that issue. Our loan forgiveness program for doctors and nurses and hygienists and physiotherapists has been a tremendous success in helping with workforce issues. I want to expand that, but I would call on him to work with us on health data because it's one of the main things that can help us in rural and remote communities. Right now, the Conservatives have taken hostage this Parliament. They will not allow a data bill to move forward, which will save lives and is critically needed, is nonpartisan. Let's get to work. Let's pass that bill.
The bill MP Holland mentioned would streamline and secure health data across jurisdictions, ensuring health information is interoperable, allowing practitioners access to all their patients' health history and data. It was tabled last June. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
Now back to the recent BC election and the investigation underway after mistakes were made, including an uncounted box of 861 ballots. CTV's Rob Buffum has more on the discrepancies.
Digital counters like these were used across BC for the first time in a provincial election. But more than 2 weeks later, Elections BC admits mistakes happened in the counting process.
Elections BC is going to be carrying out a full and complete review of this issue. This includes the identification of any necessary steps to prevent this from occurring in the future.
What did occur, an entire box of ballots in Prince George Mackenzie with 861 votes went uncounted. Officials point out the margin of victory there in the thousands, so that didn't affect the outcome, but also acknowledge other mistakes were made in 5 ridings where a total of 779 out-of-district ballots cast for 69 other ridings weren't reported due to data entry errors.
Election officials were working 14 hours or more on voting days, and on final voting day in particular, faced extremely challenging weather conditions in many parts of the province. These conditions likely contributed to these mistakes.
Notably, those out-of-district ballots changed the result in the province's tightest race, Surrey-Guildford, which the NDP won to earn a majority, but its lead now shrunk by 6 votes and a 21-vote margin.
It leads to question the integrity of the entire system. Now, I think, these are likely just human errors. I don't think there was any intent, but this is why I think we should have an independent review.
On the street, reaction is mixed.
It should be efficient. There shouldn't be any room for error.
I'm just glad that it's been brought to the surface.
It just exacerbates the polarization that we've already got in the system and will make, as I say, some people more suspicious, where others, I think, will be more comfortable with it.
Coming up next, West Vancouver is considering granting a rather controversial request. Welcome back. With just weeks to go until Black Friday, a work stoppage at BC Ports threatens to put a damper on one of the biggest retail days of the year. CTV's Ben Milger has more on the labor impasse and its possible impact on your holiday shopping plans.
The sun set on operations at Canada's busiest port on Monday, leaving cranes idle as locked-out foremen walk picket lines. Thousands of containers filled with merchandise destined for stores across the country now sit stationary on the docks.
For people who have relatively, whose delivery time is close to the sale of the goods, this will disrupt those business models very significantly.
Black Friday, the unofficial launch of the holiday shopping season, is just around the corner. Many small retailers rely on sales at this time of year just to stay afloat.
That's their Christmas inventory, and it's delayed, and they can't sell it. And moreover, the costs, the increasing costs, sometimes, amounting to thousands of dollars a day, are costs that they have to bear.
On the Vancouver Board of Trade website, a calculator estimates the value of trade disrupted in real time. It goes up by about $33 million an hour.
So every minute that goes by is costing all of us. And it's either costing retailers and companies not being able to get the goods, or in the end, the consequences that the price of goods will go up and we'll all end up paying that.
The federal government has made mediators available, but so far the Prime Minister has given no indication he plans to step in and end the impasse.
He has demonstrated a preference for negotiated settlements. I expect him to do that again, particularly with the NDP government here in British Columbia, which would also have a preference for a negotiated settlement.
With nationwide economic impacts rippling, that strategy may have a short shelf life. Ben Milger, CTV News, Vancouver.
Winds blowing upwards 100 kilometers an hour left hundreds of thousands of British Columbians in the dark. And while the lights are back on for most homes and businesses, some had to wait even longer. As CTV's Ben Nesbitt reports, experts warn more serious weather events are likely to come.
Out in full force, BC Hydro crews working around the clock to get power restored.
We're kind of all hands on deck again today.
The Crown Utility says around 290,000 customers across the province lost power during Monday's storm. As of Tuesday afternoon, it was restored for nearly everyone.
What crews are dealing with now are the more difficult spots, so the spots that were harder to access that we couldn't get up to because we needed helicopter access yesterday. We're hoping to have the vast majority of customers restored by the end of the day, but there may be small pockets that are without power again for another night.
In North Vancouver, one of the hardest hit areas, the site of this hydro crew near Marine Drive was a welcome sight for businesses that were forced to close.
They were mostly just scaling ingredients this morning rather than actually making the bread, which, you know, they're probably going to be here a bit later today.
Trees weren't the only victims of the blistering winds. The roof of this truck crossing the Alex Fraser Bridge proved to be no match. And here on Highway 1 in Chilliwack, another truck tumbled over. BC Highway Patrol confirms that wind was a major factor in the crash, while the driver escaped without injury. The heavy blow from Mother Nature, one even the experts found hard to see coming.
It was a pretty significant event, one that required adjustments in both our alerts and the forecast right until essentially it was upon us on the doorstep.
Environment Canada says extended droughts over the past few years made trees more vulnerable to the wind.
The previous several summers play a role on how our tree infrastructure are going to behave under those influences.
Environment Canada says we'll likely see multiple significant rain events this month. People are encouraged to have emergency kits ready in both their homes and vehicles. Ben Nesbitt, CTV News, Burnaby.
Word has come out recently from the BC River Forecast Centre with a very crucial warning regarding the North Coast. The Forecast Centre has issued a flood watch for the Nass River and its nearby tributaries around Stewart, Terrace, Prince Rupert, Kitimat, as well as a few other coastal communities in BC, mainly due to the heavy rainfall warnings that have been forecast for the North Coast and the Terrace-Kitimat area. This means that the local river levels are rising and could end up getting close to overflowing or completely exceeding its bank full, and flooding could potentially occur in areas that are adjacent to the affected bodies of water. It's also not clear as to when the precipitation could clear up a bit, and the flood watch seems like it will be in place until further notice. Now, over to Jaylee Matthews with tonight's weather forecast.
As you can see, we're having a bit of weather here. Turning to tonight's weather forecast, the North Coast will see heavy rain while the low sits at 11 degrees. The Terrace-Kitimat area is expected to see its share of rain as well, with the low being at 9 degrees. And the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District will see some showers as their low is down at 5 degrees.
On the North Coast, the next week or so will deal with essentially only rain, as the high for them moves from 10 to 7 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, the week for them will be mostly rain to begin before some snow sets in, and the high will jump between 10 and 2 degrees. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, the upcoming week will start with rain and clouds, get maybe a little sun in the middle and snow at the end, while the high bounces from 11 to 1 degree. Checking out the highways now, the Nisga'a Highway has very recently been closed down overnight, and you can visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is slippery sections, a geotechnical investigation, maintenance work, utility work, construction work, shoulder maintenance, snowing, ditching, and the Usk Ferry is currently out of service due to the low river levels. Highway 37 has some compact snow, roadside brushing, and slippery sections. 37A has compact snow, some construction work and bridge maintenance on the Nisga'a Highway, and the Telegraph Creek Road has slippery sections as well. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, we look back at the life of one of the biggest music producers ever. Welcome back. The District of West Vancouver is considering a controversial request by waterfront property owners to build private docks on the public foreshore near Horseshoe Bay. Council says residents have been sounding the alarm about the desire for water access for a long time due to concerns in the rugged area. As CTV's Yasmin Gandhi reports, it's not the first time West Vancouver has been subject to controversy around private and public beach use.
The area is on Pascal Road, a steep, narrow, and remote area in West Vancouver with roughly 21 homes. There is only one road leading to the neighborhood, and residents say the addition of the docks would make their property safer in the event of an emergency.
The only way that these residents would be able to is to evacuate their property would be via the water.
The area saw record flooding and road closures last month, leading to evacuation orders for 7 properties on the North Shore.
Shortly after, I received a couple of emails from people just saying, here's a perfect example of some of the risk factors that we have moving forward. I mean, if this roadway, the single access point to and from their residence, was washed out from the storm.
The next step is a public council hearing on November 18th, where residents can speak on the issue. When asked whether it's a tactic to increase property value,
these are going to be short-term use for people to access their properties just from the waterfront. So again, the idea that we would be doing this to increase people's property value, not in my view.
a public beach access trail in West Vancouver is in limbo while the district finalizes a private sale of the property it sits on. This week, council voted to require the buyer to create a new footpath. Until then, the public will still be able to use the beach, but council says the area around Pascal Road isn't accessible to the public.
There's not beachway that's being accessed or being blocked or limited to the public. You can't get there by foot because all it is rocky cliffs.
If council goes ahead with the plan, any new docks would still be subject to safety and environmental permits. Yasmin Gandhi, CTV News, West Vancouver.
Students at some Burnaby high schools could have their days start earlier or their afternoons last longer beginning next fall. As CTV's Abigail Turner explains it, it's because these schools are jam-packed.
This is the letter some parents at Burnaby high schools received this week, explaining their child's schedule could shift next year.
It just adds more kind of chaos, more stress.
It's a move the Burnaby School District says it's considering, expanding the start and end time of classes at these 5 high schools. Right now, classes are divided into 4 blocks, and the school division is looking at adding a 5th block. This wouldn't mean that students' classes would be increased. Instead, it would shift their schedule based on what class they were enrolled in, with the hopes of creating more capacity in the classrooms. $270 million has been given to the Burnaby School District by the province in the past 7 years. Still, many schools having to turn to using portables.
When we know more people are coming and the city has put out their plans that, this area is going to have this many hundreds of thousands of people, we need to be making sure that we're planning for that and making sure that we have schools for all the families that are coming, because at this point we don't even have enough space for the kids that we've got.
The switch would follow the Surrey School Board's footsteps, where 5 schools moved to extended days this September.
It's an ongoing issue in Surrey, but it is just a temporary fix until we can get more funding, either more models, more modulars, more additions, and certainly the promise of more schools.
The Burnaby School District would not do an interview, instead emailing to say, quote, "The pace of growth at many of our high schools is such that we can't wait to build ourselves out of the capacity issues we are immediately facing." While parents in Burnaby grapple with the potential changes, so too are students.
For teenagers, getting up earlier, a lot of them are not so excited about that.
There's no word on when a final decision could be made, but she says many students pick their classes for the next school year in February and hopes an answer will come before then. Abigail Turner, CTV News, Burnaby.
He was a titan and a trailblazer in the music industry. The entertainment world is remembering producer Quincy Jones. He worked with the biggest names in music, from Frank Sinatra to Michael Jackson. CTV's Andrea Case has more on Jones's life and legacy.
In 1963, at the age of 30, this was the first of dozens of memorable hit songs Quincy Delight Jones produced over his 70-year career. Born in Chicago in 1933, Jones was a trumpet player turned composer.
Fly me to the moon.
We had the best time. It was like being on another planet with him. Frank would say, "Q,
Live every day like it's the last, and one day you'll be right.
From Old Blue Eyes to the King of Pop. Michael Jackson's second solo album, Thriller, is the best-selling album of all time, and it paved the way for black artists on the pop charts. Jones teamed up with Jackson again for the fundraising record We Are the World for famine relief in Ethiopia.
I like to think about the studio as a place that's real sacred, where magical things happen. Hopefully. That's what great records are supposed to be about.
Winning 28 Grammys, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for his exemplary contribution to music. Iconic Canadian musician and photographer Bryan Adams had the good fortune to spend some time with the music legend.
And he started to tell me about Ray Charles and Frank Sinatra and Michael Jackson and all the different bands he'd worked with and the singers. And I was just sitting there like, whoa. This is incredible to have this moment to talk to him.
Quincy Jones was a survivor. He suffered 2 brain aneurysms in 1974 that almost killed him, but he went right back to work. The father of 7 died last night with his family by his side. Quincy Jones was 91. Andrea Case, CTV News.
And now we turn our attention to how the stock markets are looking as of today compared to yesterday. The Canadian dollar is down 42/10 cents. The price of gold is down $73.40. Oil is down 30 cents. Natural gas is up 8 cents. Aluminum is up $26. In Toronto, the TSX is up 249.55 points. The Venture Index is down 1.61. In New York, the Dow Jones is up 1,508.05. And NASDAQ is up 544.29. Still ahead, a family is trying to find new homes for the books of a deceased relative. Welcome back. When an 80-year-old man died, among the things he left his family was his book collection, and it's a huge collection at that with about 40,000 books. And now they're trying to find all of those books a brand new home. CTV's Sweta Razzie has more.
Mais les livres, il voulait pas les garder.
Michel Leduc was enjoying retirement until his life became like a story out of a novel, or in this case, tens of thousands of novels.
Quand je suis arrivé ici, j'ai eu
When I came here, I was in shock, he says. He didn't even know his brother, a former library technician, an avid reader, had 40,000 books, which he spent 60 years collecting. It's taking Leduc 3 years to organize everything. He's already donated 10,000 books, and the rest are here, inside this Rosemont apartment.
C'est la chose la plus difficile que...
Organizing all these books is the hardest thing he's ever done, he says. He's turned the apartment into a secondhand bookstore that's open for business 4 days a week, with the average price of a book here less than $10.
Il y a des journées...
Some days I get almost 100 clients, and every time a book is sold, Leduc says he smiles, knowing it's found a new home.
Parce qu'un livre, c'est fait pour être lu.
A book is meant to be read, he says. He hopes some of the books his brother never got to finish will be enjoyed by someone else. And when they're all sold, Leduc plans to return to the previous chapter of his life, retirement. Sweta Razzie, CTV News.
That's all of our news for now. From all of us here at CFTK-TV News, I'm Kale Maslin, and thank you for watching. We will see you next time.